In the previous video in our application, we had implemented type safety by taking out wherever we are making use of generic any data type. Now it's time we have to implement the next level, that is the login feature for this application. So far we have not implemented login feature, right? So it's time for us to implement another page which includes the login credentials where we can log in into this application. So let's do that now. Let's switch to Visual Studio Code. So inside our user folder, let's create a new component, that is login.component.ts. Okay. So as usual for this login component, let's define the skeletal shell for this. As usual for all the components which we define, that is we will import component from Angular core. Okay. And let's decorate with @component decorator. Okay. And inside this, we'll define the template URL. Let's name it as ./login.component.html. Okay. Now what else we need to do? We need to export a class for this, that is login component class. And this login component class, let's define whatever the variables and methods later. For now, this is enough. We have implemented login.component.ts so far. So for this, we have created login.component.html. We have provided the path for this inside our template URL, right? So let's create login.component.html next inside our user folder. Let's create another file with name login.component.html. Okay, login.component.html. So inside this, we have to specify whatever we want to display on our web page. So initially what we want to display, as login header. Okay. So after this, I'm going to provide HR tag and some div class. As usual, whatever we want to specify on our web page, we can provide over here. I'll provide some column spacing with MD4. Okay. And inside this div, I'm going to define a form over here. Okay. I'm going to define a form with some attribute. For example, autocomplete will specify for now. Okay. Off. Okay. So inside this form, let's define some form groups. Okay. So div class equals form group, and inside this form group, we want to specify some labels and input elements. So let's specify that label for which one I want to specify for login page, whatever the required things for login page, that is we need a username and password, right? And submit and cancel as usual. These are the like normal cases for any login page for any application. These are like mandatory things which we have to follow. So let's define all that now. Label, we want to specify username. Okay. And the name for this is username. Okay. This is the label I'm going to create, and for this label I want to specify the input. What I want to specify, I want to specify ID, that is username. Okay, this is normal HTML which we usually use, and type equals text. Okay, and what else we need to specify? Class for it, so that we can have form control. Class equals form control. Okay, after this we want to specify placeholder. Okay, placeholder equals username. Okay, for now this is enough, and we'll close it. Similarly, like this, another div I'm going to create, in which I'm going to specify password as well. So let me copy this. Instead of wasting time on writing HTML content, we'll just modify the required fields over here. So instead of username, I'm going to specify as password, and label will be password. Okay, so what else? ID will be password. Wherever there is username, you can just replace with password. Okay, so this is done. So we have created username and password. So what else is required? We need two buttons, right? Two buttons. One button is for login, another button is for cancel. So let's define that as well. Okay, here let's specify button. Okay, with type equals submit. Okay, class equals btn hyphen primary. I'm going to use bootstrap over here. Okay, for my button, and I'm going to name it as login. Okay, similarly, I'll just copy this and I'll paste it here, and I'm going to specify type as button. This will be btn hyphen default. Okay, and the name of the button will be cancel button. Okay, that's it. So these are the required fields which we wanted, right? Whatever we wanted to define so far, we have defined as part of this HTML. That is initially a div element. Inside this div, I am going to specify a form, and inside this form, another div which is having a username form group, another one which is having password form group, then followed by two buttons. Okay. So once these buttons are defined, I'm going to close this div. See, if you observe here, this div I have closed and this div I have closed. What is use of this div? Not necessary. So we can just remove it. Okay. And this form we have closed here, this div over here, and finally that's it. That's it is required over here. We'll save all these changes. So whatever the web content which we want to display on our login page, we have defined over here, and we have defined component as well. So what is the next step? Next step, I want to include this as part of registration inside user module. See, inside our user.module.ts, we have to register this component which we have used so far, that is login component. So let's define that login component over here. We can import that. Okay, before that, I'll just include inside declarations array, that is login component. It will automatically, it will import from /login.component, right? So that's it. These are the changes which I have to do inside user.module.ts. What is the next step? I want to include inside my routing, right? Where is my route? User.routes.ts. Inside user.routes.ts, I want to specify the path for this login component, right? So I have to specify over here, that is path for that component. I want to name it as login, and associated component for it is login component, right? Login component. So this way it is importing login component from /login.component. So that's it. These are the changes which we have done so far. Whatever we have done, we have created a component, then we have created HTML file which displays the login details, that is the login information where we want to specify username and password and click on submit button. Okay, that is we named that button as login, and we have included inside user.module.ts, we have registered this component and we have included the routing for it. Okay, so now what is actually required? So far whatever we have done is absolutely fine, but this is not enough, right? What is not provided over here, if you observe inside login.component.html, okay, we have defined a form over here, right? But for this form I have to also specify ng submit event, so that whenever I submit the login credentials, it has to log in into the page, right? That is, once I log into that screen, it should come here into all events page, right? So I have to specify ng submit event over here. So let's do that now. So for this form, let's create a reference variable with hash login form. If you want to understand more about this reference variable concept, you can refer my previous videos where I have explained clearly about this reference variable. Okay, ng form, and here I want to specify an event. Okay, that is ng submit event, which will trigger, when this should trigger, On submitting the login page. On submitting the login page, this should trigger, right? So I have to specify over here a method which takes login form, the login form, what it should take, login form, value it should take, right? So login form dot value. This is what I have to specify over here. And for this, there are few other modifications which we have to do. What is those modifications which we have to do? Whatever the input elements which we have specified so far, if you observe here, the input element which we have specified for username, password, everything, does not have a way to return the data. Return the data means, for example, on our login page, whenever we are entering username and password, Angular should know whatever we have entered and it should store in the form of an object, right? Whatever the HTML content which we are providing over here as part of the values should be specified for our component. Then only our component will understand what should do with these values, with these fields, right? So for that, we are going to make use of ng model. Okay. Using this ng model, we can achieve data binding. Data binding means, see, if you observe here, we are using these braces, right? These braces, what it will indicate? It will indicate that whatever the data provided here, it will pass from HTML to component, associated component. That is what is the use of this component. If we use square braces along with this, then it will be banana in the box model, which is a two-way data binding. For now, we don't require that. We just need the data to be passed from HTML to component. So let's provide value for it, that is user name. Okay, ng model username, and we have to associate another attribute for it, that is name. This is mandatory. Without this, it will not work, right? So we have to specify user name here. Okay. Similarly, like how we have implemented for the username, similarly we have to implement for the password as well. Okay, let's do that. Ng model. Okay, this ng model equals password, and similarly name attribute, name equals password. These things we have to specify as part of our HTML. Okay, now what we are doing over here, ng model we have specified, we are passing username and password, but how our component will take from here, right? We have to specify some variables where it will take, right? So inside our login.component.ts, we have to specify these variables required for it, that is username and password. Okay, these properties we are going to specify over here. Next, what else comes from HTML? One thing is username and password will come. The other thing which will come from here, if you observe on ng submit, we are providing a login method over here, right? So we have to implement this login method inside our component.ts. So let's do that now. So inside login.component.ts, let's implement login method which will take form values. Okay, which will take form values. And for now, I'm going to pass inside this method this form values, and I'm going to return to console to see whether our object is getting created with this username and password which we have entered on our login page. Okay, to do that, what we'll do, we will console.log with form values. Okay, we'll save these changes. So now if you observe from beginning, whatever we have done, we have created a component. Inside this component, we have provided username and password, and we have provided a login method which will take these form values which will come from login.component.html. But to create a form and we want to pass these values from this form, we have to specify Angular. We have to specify Angular to understand that we are passing the values in the form, in this form. So to do that, first we have to register it inside the user.module.ts. So inside our user.module.ts, we have to include another import, that is forms module. So without this forms module, Angular will not understand, right? So we have to specify Angular explicitly by importing forms module. Okay, let's import forms module from @angular/forms. Okay, and this forms module we have to include inside our imports array. Imports array, we have to specify forms module. Okay, let's save all these changes. and we'll put a comma over here. Now it is fine. Okay, so what else is required? We have defined a component inside our HTML. We have defined a form which will take username and password, and there are two buttons, login and cancel. And we are returning these values whatever we have provided inside an object, and it will be passed to this method where these form values will be displayed in our console.log. Okay, we have registered here and we have provided a required routing for it. That's it. These are the required changes which we have implemented in order to provide a login form to our application. So let's save all these changes. Okay, let's compile this project. Let's compile this project, and by making use of npm space start, our project is getting compiled. It's building the modules. It got compiled successfully and hosted on localhost colon 4200. Let's open this inside our Google Chrome browser. Okay, now if you observe, this is our all events page. Okay, now whatever we have implemented the login page, if you observe, what is the routing for it? If you go to Visual Studio, what is the routing for it? Login, right? So it will be user/login. Let's provide that URL over here. That is user/login. See, now user/login, once I provide this URL, you can see that we can see a login form getting created with username and password, and there are two buttons, login and cancel. Now what I'm going to do, I'll just enter some value over here and even here, username and password. Let's open the console and let's see how it is getting printed. See, if you observe the console over here, we have specified ng submit event, right? We have specified ng submit event, and this ng submit event will call login method. Login method is defined inside our component, and this login method, what we are returning, console.log the form values, right? So inside our console we have to see whatever the values we have passed for username and password. So how we can see? By clicking on login button. Let's see now. See, if you click on login button, you can see an object getting created with username Prince and password Harsha, whatever I have provided here. Right. So this is successful. An object got created successfully. Right. Whatever we have returned over here, that is console.log, whatever the form values we have captured from HTML is getting returned on our console successfully. Right. That's it. So whatever we have implemented so far, the login page is successful. Right. That's it for this video. So far we have implemented a basic login. We have not yet done any authentication, securities or anything. We will see all those in our future videos. For now, this is like a skeleton we are creating and we are implementing in this project. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please like, comment and share this video, and kindly subscribe to my channel in order to watch more videos, and click on that bell icon so that you will be receiving notifications whenever I am uploading a new video. Thank you so much.